it used to be in chiropractic school, one of the major things we talked about was the different curves of the spine. So if you look at a spine, there's somebody's spine, and if you look at straight this way, you want to have it pretty straight. So scoliosis, everybody's heard of scoliosis. Scoliosis would be something like this, okay, curvature of the spine. I'm not here to talk about that. But what I'm here to talk about is the different curves of the spine. So if you look at somebody sideways, this would be the face here, back of the head here. There's supposed to be these different curves in the spine, like this. So, and tonight we're going to talk mostly about the neck because that's what happens, gets compromised in with cell phone use. So what happens is, back in my early days of practice, we were always conscious of somebody's neck. So we wanted to have somebody to have a nice curve in the neck, a nice forward-facing curve. And anytime you see an X-ray of straightening of the neck, there's some compromise of the nerves, of the muscles, of the ligaments, of the proper functioning of the neck. So you talk to the person. Usually there's some kind of a history of trauma, maybe habitual things of lying in bed, reading or watching TV with your head propped up like this. So this is basically the posture we're talking about. So, and anybody here who's experienced anybody with Parkinson's gait is sort of like this. It's a slow gait, but the head is always down. Dementia, head is always down. Real elderly people, they're always in this flexion posture. And what happens is, there are reasons that happen. So the reasons that Parkinson's patients do it, or dementia patients, is that their brain is being affected by these diseases. And because of that, the whole relationship to gravity, the whole relationship to the environment is way off. So they have this posture, they can't, it's depressive posture. Anybody who looks like that or acts like that, it's sort of a depressive posture. And what's happening now with cell phones, all the posture is like that. It's all, anybody who has kids, I do it myself. I have a cell phone. I like listening to podcasts. I try not to talk on it to my head because I'm afraid of stuff coming into my brain. Who knows? That's what they say maybe is happening. So obviously we're not going to get rid of cell phones. You're not going to be able to take cell phones away from people, away from kids. Now, all you guys are parents, obviously. So we're talking about the kids, but we're same stuff is happening with us. We're all in this flesh and dominant posture. And the reasons that posture is so detrimental is a few things. It creates headaches because when things stretch like this, there's all this pressure on these nerves here. A real big thing is that when the neck is in the proper position, the weight of most people's heads are somewhere between 10 and 12 pounds. So the weight of that head, everything was designed to allow the weight of that head to be distributed properly along this curve. But when that weight of the head starts going forward, they know in a lot of research they're doing now that a movement of 15 degrees forward, so maybe just doing this, instead of 10-pound weight of the head, it's 28 pounds. If you go to 30 degrees, which is something probably like this, the weight is 38 pounds of pressure. If you go to 45 degrees, which is probably like this, the weight in the head is 48 pounds. And if you go to 60 degrees, which is looking like this, the weight of the head on the neck, on the different structures here, is 60 pounds. It's 6 times the weight of normal posture. So just because of that, the reason that this is such a detrimental posture is that what starts happening is that arthritic changes start happening. So they're not seeing arthritic changes in people in their 50s, 60s, 70s now. They're seeing arthritic changes in people 20, 30, and 40. So all of this stuff is happening. And again, there's not a lot we're going to be able to do about it. So in my, as a chiropractor, I see adults and I see children with these kinds of issues, with headaches and neck pain, and just, more than just some tightness from the cell phone use, but an actual pain, and that's what gets parents bringing their kids in to see me. But it's a real problem. So what I'm here to do is to try to talk about counteracting that posture. So in thinking logically about it, and these things are available, and yoga is, I don't know how many people are familiar with yoga here, but yoga is something that people can do, and a lot of the different exercises that have been for back pain, different things, are actually yoga postures that have been sort of stolen by different people to give to for back exercise, but most of them do come from yoga. So I think everybody has a sheet with the different exercises. Okay, so I guess I'll get it. So the first one is, can be, and both of these can be done sitting or standing. They're real simple, and it's called a butterfly. And basically what you want to do is and this is really good for all of us. So again, and it says down the bottom, if you have any questions, you can always call me in my office, or I'd be glad to help out. But basically, it's just clasping your hands behind your head. And this motion with your elbows is really important, because what happens is, and everybody can do it if you want, just bring your hands up here, because all of our motion is always like this. So we want to just do opposite stretches. So you want to do this. And what you know about muscle or changing muscular patterns is that you need a sustained contraction. So bring your hands behind your head, bring your elbows back, and just putting a little pressure, and not a lot, just a little pressure with your head going back into your hands. And I say in the sheet, just take a deep breath, because also what happens is, in this posture, the respirations are not deep. So this is just a time that people can take some deep breaths. So it's just looking, and just taking the opposite stretch, so having some extension. So looking either level or even up a little bit. So it's just doing this and just holding some pressure and just relaxing, holding it. I'm not going to do it holding it for 10 seconds. And it could be 5 seconds. It could just be, the truth is, if they do any of this stuff, it's really going to help them, because it's just, there's so much of the flexion posture going on that if you get them just even in telling kids to just look up. Just, we just need to look up. Just look up. With a lot of things in life, but just look up. So the other one is just, we call it a shoulder blade squeeze. So it's just having your hands up like this and bringing your shoulder blades together and just holding that. So again, it brings this back. You're going to be in this posture, so you're going to be opposite of this posture. It's just holding it for 10 seconds, doing repetitions of 10. Again, it's just to try to get the kids to just have some kind of a counter to all of what is going on constantly. And they can actually do it in their chairs. Hopefully, I'm sure they won't get in trouble if they do it when they're at school. So those two are really good for sitting or standing. And then there's lying down ones, and I'll just go here. So it's just, in yoga, it could be called the cobra or an upward facing dog. So it's doing this, and it's basically just getting to this point and just holding it for 10 seconds, releasing it, just doing it for 10 repetitions. And again, you're looking up, and with all this stuff, it's just logical stuff. You just want to go opposite of the flexion posture. Because the flexion posture, it's going to be, I try not to be pessimistic about things, but it's, with your talk, it's very easy to be pessimistic about it. One of my questions was, there's not a lot of women doing this stuff, are there?
About
doing this.
Online predators?
Yeah.
It's a high percentage is male. There's a small percentage of women.
That's true. It's very small. It's embarrassing. That's my gender. But anyway, that's just a little aside. But you can do, you know, so the upward facing dog, then there's Superman, and that's just, again, just doing this, and just doing this kind of thing. You want thumbs up, so you have that opposite stretch of the shoulders. And then there's a nice one you can do, kids can just do against a wall. It's a modified Superman, but it's just coming up against the wall, having your head back here and just putting pressure and just holding it. Okay, you know, we'll see if they'll do it, but there's not, you know, there's not, unfortunately, it doesn't seem there's a lot that can be done other than just trying to accept the fact that we're going to be in these postures. I've mentioned somebody before, maybe they can have some kind of way of creating for a cell phone not to work in a position of lying down this way. It has to work this way. So you have to have it in front of your face. No, it's not going to happen. Give it a try. Yeah. And that's really all I have. I guess we're going to get together and answer
I have a question. Do you recommend standing desk for example, I'm thinking of me of like working in an office?
Yeah, you know, that comes up a lot. And I think a standing desk is good. You know, it's really difficult to stand all the time at work. You know, so they say, you know, the biggest thing now is sitting is the new smoking. I'm not sure that's exactly true. That seems a little extreme, but yeah, sitting is not the greatest thing. So yeah, if you can alternate, you know, I tell people who don't have standing desks, just get up and move. And you can do backward arm things, you know, anything that just opens everything up. That's really what needs to be done. And you know, these kinds of problems are they're going to be around. They're not going anywhere. Frankly, it's a pretty big boom to the chiropractic profession because really one of the only things that I know what to do is because of this, what happens is that when this is like this for a while, things move out of place, and you start this whole cycle of pain and discomfort and dysfunction. There's a lot of evidence about brain function and this kind of posture. We're not even getting into that now. So you know, there are things that can be done, but it's, you know, parents, it's not easy being a parent. Or a grandparent. If you do it twice a day, it would be great. Yeah. Or even once a day would be great. Honestly. Just something.
Unless you're young to start.
No, definitely not. No, probably too young to use a cell phone.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's yeah.
Okay, we'll just take a moment for everybody to take a seat. I hate to say it now. Take a seat at the table downstairs. And we'll take some questions from everybody.
So just to remind you who we've got here, Camilla Barrera, who you've heard her quite powerful presentation so far this evening, Dr. Howard Goldberg, who's given us an overview from the chiropractic point of view, Darlene Vittori, who's a nurse practitioner and may be able to answer anything you have from a social emotional point of view, some of the clients and patients that present to you and the things that they're talking about. And then we've got Lieutenant Chad Thompson and Brian DiGiorgio, Officer Brian DiGiorgio, who's our school liaison officer, both from Holliston Police Department. So we'd love to get your take on this evening and any further questions. So has anyone got anything they'd like to ask first of all?
Hi there. Thank you for coming and for your talks. This was really helpful. And I have a question. So I have a 7-year-old son and a 10-year-old daughter, and they do not have cell phones at this point. I'm not looking forward to getting them cell phones until they absolutely need them. But they do have access to the internet, and they do school projects. And I struggle with having them be able to research the things that they want to research without my standing over their shoulder and talking to them about what things that might be inappropriate, and letting me know if they see anything that's inappropriate, and having them use their own judgment. But at 7 and 10, that judgment's a little skewed, and I feel like they need a lot more guidance. And I'm just concerned about, I don't want to scare them. I don't know how much it's okay to tell them about the things that could happen and the reasons why they need to let me know if they see something or if somebody's trying to contact them. I do try and limit the apps that they have that have chats, but I'm wondering if you guys can give some tips on how to talk to younger kids about being safe.
So when it comes to younger kids, the conversation should always come from a guardian or a parent when you're starting that. So it has to be age appropriate. So for a 7-year-old, I wouldn't be talking about sexting, but I would be talking about inappropriate posts. And what does that look to them? And I will ask them that question. Have you seen anything inappropriate, or what is inappropriate to you? And, they might say, he, butts, or something like that. But talking about that at their level and talking about strangers, because one of the biggest things that I see is that when we talk to our kids about stranger danger, we tell them from kindergarten on, stranger danger, don't talk to strangers. But we don't talk about, hey, you're going to be meeting strangers online. When in reality, they're not going to the park and meeting random people. They're all meeting them online. So having that conversation without scaring them, but talking to them, hey, this is why I'm concerned. And I just want to have this open communication because sometimes random people might talk to you. And you can even put it in a way that is not trying to scare them, but saying they might not realize that you're a completely different person. Maybe they thought you were a friend. And so it's just trying to accommodate that conversation for their age. And there's a lot of settings that you can have on Google, for example, that are approved by you. So if they're searching anything for school, inappropriate content that it's not age appropriate for them would be blocked. So it would only be based on their age. So you can also do that just so you don't have to be over their shoulder the entire time.
Google filters by age?
You can filter it by age groups and content. If you go through their settings, they have like pages and pages of settings, but you can see what works best for you. And you can search a lot of different things and filter a lot of stuff out. Of course.
From a pediatrician's perspective, a lot of times with these younger ones, we tell parents to go through the search engines that they used earlier in the day. And if anything pops up that seems a little bit sketchy to you, to go back with your son or daughter and say, hey, listen, when I was going through your history, I saw this. How did this make you feel? And at least engage in a conversation. Because oftentimes if we do this approach of trying to scare them or this stranger danger thing, which they never think is going to happen to them, they never think it's going to happen to them. So oftentimes these frightening stories and even some of these videos don't have the impact on the kids that they have on the adults.
As far as the Google is concerned, I was just wondering, I usually have my son log in through the school account, hoping and figuring that the school has that locked down so that they can't, so he has to log in with that username and password and things, and I'm hoping that that's, but I don't know. I know this isn't exactly the right group to ask on that question. But I guess my other question was, do you think there are benefits to getting a flip phone or something like that? Does that eliminate some of the things, or is that then not teaching them how to use, the smartphone or the apps and stuff that they'll need? I don't know where the right line is of when to embrace the technology and when not to. I'm going to defer to Dan McLeod, who's our technology director.
Hi, I can answer the school account for Google. That is correct. The same filtering that the student gets in school would work at home using that account. So we encourage kids, we actually block personal accounts on our devices to make sure they use our account. So it's much more monitored than personal.
Any other questions?
Yes, I can address the use in apps and phones. Something that I know that my talk is extremely scary and everyone probably wants to go home and take everything away. But when we're thinking about social media, and you mentioned it too, phones are not going away. Everything is staying. If anything, it's just getting better and everyone's having access to it. And the thing is that having Instagram, having Snapchat, if you know how to use it, it's fun. If you're on Facebook and you're able to talk to your friends, it's fun. The reality is that they're going to get to that point where they're going to use it. Even if they don't have a phone, they might have a tablet, or they'll have a laptop, an iPod Touch. And one of my friends, he got his daughter an iPod Touch, and he was so proud. And he was like, oh, I didn't get her a cell phone, just an iPod Touch. And I sat him down and I said, I'm so sorry, and you're going to hate me for this. But you can do the same thing on an iPod Touch that you can do on a cell phone. You can make phone calls. You can make video chats. So it's just being able to, if you are going to get them a cell phone, talk about the rules. This is what I got it for you. I know many parents actually wait for a certain age to give them cell phones. I know that some of them are very strict about what apps they can get. So it's all about having that conversation. I know I started my little brother with a flip phone. And then he upgraded to a BlackBerry. And then from there, he upgraded to my old phone. And then finally, when he went to high school, I said, okay, now you can get a new one. But it's all about having that conversation, too. And, what makes you feel comfortable? It's all up to you, too.
I have an 11-year-old daughter. We basically gave her my wife's older iPhone. It only works with Wi-Fi. There's no cellular connected to it, so we can monitor it that way. Especially if we're in the car, she can only use it if my wife has her hotspot on. Same thing at home. She can only use it through our Wi-Fi. I know Comcast, you can have settings, time limits and stuff like that. She does have a Snapchat account, but it's heavily monitored by me and my wife. We're always in and out of the room. She's usually in the room with us using it, so we're always monitoring it. You just have to be a parent with it, basically. You have to just monitor it.
Well, that's it at home.
Right.
You can keep it monitored.
Right.
Once it leaves home, then I can't be in control of that and the settings and things like that.
Yeah, that's the hard part.
I think it's important to continue to have a dialogue with your son or daughter and have them educate you about the app and the device, and keeping that two-way communication going between you and your son or daughter. It makes them feel important. It makes your relationship stronger. And I think, again, just keeping that two-way dialogue, let them educate you. I mean, these kids are so savvy these days. So I think it's important to keep that dialogue.
I think one of the things Camilla talked about towards the end of her talk was the contracts. We use them a lot in pediatrics with our families and patients, and just trying to come up with ways to agree with what's going to be responsible use, what are we going to agree to, what are you going to agree to, and if you break that agreement, what are the consequences. I do feel like those contracts are really helpful, and obviously they have to be age appropriate, and you have to change them as they go, but that works really well when we start talking about parties and things like that too, because you've already got the contract thing started, so it gets you going that way too. I will say my daughter is in 8th grade here, and I learned about some things happening on Snapchat from her. And I work in adolescent medicine, so I pride myself on the fact that I know everything, and clearly I don't. So, but they were also talking about these Snapchat accounts that you could download where people could comment about you anonymously. And there was a lot of bullying happening within this school on an app like that. And the only way that we started to get involved in that is as parents, some of our kids were telling us about it. So them teaching us about it was the way we were able to help stop that within this middle school a couple of years ago.
I have a couple of things to say. The school encourages kids to type at home, and there are different typing programs. I was quite relaxed about my son using at 10 years old something like a typing engine. And then I discovered that there is a common chat. And many people use such names like I like to smoke marijuana or something like this. And so it's you never know what's happening there. So I stopped him from doing this. But my main question was about phones with basic functions for younger kids. Like if you talk about 14 years old, probably it's very hard to stop them from using Snapchat and something like this. But for younger kids, like for 10 years old, I try to understand if I'm a crazy mother trying to stop my child from using the internet in his age without supervision. And second thing is using computer at the same room as we do, where we stay. Like, is it mandatory things for kids to make it somehow safer, or there are any other ways? Because I think that he uses Google through my account too. Thank you.
Hi, I came today for my high schooler, and I had banned Snapchat for her, but I found out after the fact that she's been using it, and I got her password, and by the time I got to go back on it, she had changed the password. I'm interested in learning how and if parents can get access to those discrete apps that can recover photos, and such. I would just like to demonstrate to her that nothing's gone forever in Snapchat. And I would also like to show her these videos we saw tonight. Are they available on YouTube so we can smarten them up?
Yes, you can find them on YouTube. And if you look up Social Experiment, you'll find them all. And there's a lot of different things that you can use. One of the things I tell parents all the time, those phones are yours. Even if they have it, you're paying for the bill. And so technically they're your phones. A lot of companies, such as AT&T, actually provide, if you pay like an extra $5 a month or something like that, they give you access to apps and things that who they're talking to, when they go on Facebook, when they go on Snapchat. So they have those different type of access that you can monitor from your phone. And those are different things that you can do as well. With Snapchat, it's if she changes the password, if you have access to that phone, you can take it from her and try to go through it. But it's really starting that conversation because, like you said, you told her she couldn't have it, but she will anyway. Yeah. Unfortunately, that's where we are right now because a lot of times they're going to have it anyway. And the important thing is how are they using it and what are they using it for? So being able to have that conversation and finding that support for yourself and for her on how to deal with those type of topics that are coming up.
There are a couple of apps that you can download, and you can research them yourself, but there's like WebWatcher and Beanstalk.com, and some of them you can actually plug in keywords that you want to be notified if they're used in any kind of social media account, like sex or drugs or whatever, which are too obvious, so I would come up with the slang terms that your teens use instead. But without taking away all their privacy, there's a way for some of these apps to then find what you're looking for that you're nervous about within those apps. But you've got to do a little bit of research so that you know what you're paying for, because most of these apps cost money.
They'll find ways around it to break the apps too.
As long as they don't know you have the app. So that's the other big thing. You need to keep a secret too.
Brian, I have a question for you. At the high school, or even if Mike does it down here at the middle school, do you have sessions with the kids where you show them that you think that you posted this, you think it went away 5 minutes ago, and look, here it is? Do you do programs with the kids? Because sometimes as much as it's important for us to have that relationship with the kids, quite honestly, my kids do a lot better when someone else tells them something, especially when it comes to this particular topic.
Yeah, we don't have, I guess you would say we don't have a classroom instruction within the high school. We don't have any curriculum as a police department to discuss cybersecurity. What has happened in the past is if we've had maybe an incident and we have a couple students involved in that incident where there might have been a cyber crime or a sexting incident, we might have an educational component with that. But we don't have like a classroom type curriculum set up. I believe the middle school, or I know when the students are issued Chromebooks at the middle school level, there is a conversation surrounding security and how to protect themselves, but we don't have something in place at the moment. Absolutely.
So other things that we provide as well is presentations for students, middle school and high schoolers. And it's very similar to this. Watered down a little bit so I don't traumatize your kids. But we do talk about the issues around internet safety, Snapchat, Instagram. We talk about the apps that they're using. We talk about different things that they're doing online and how to be mindful of what they're doing. And a lot of times I'm really surprised with the great input that they have. So, for example, when we're talking about Snapchat and I talk about the map set and how you can find your friends and whoever you follow, a lot of them tell me, I don't like that. I turn it off because it makes me feel uncomfortable that other people can see that. So I give them credit because a lot of them are trying to be mindful of what they're doing. They just sometimes don't realize the extent of what they're doing with those apps. But we do provide presentations for young people at middle school and high schools on topics like this.
How do we tap into those?
They can call me. The same way that this was set up, I coordinate the program, so a lot of that goes through me, and we'll find the right time. I go to schools multiple times. There was one school I was just at this morning that I was there probably 4 times before that, just because it was the times that worked for them and the times that worked for me. So it all depends on what you're looking for, and we're happy to work with it. Yes.
I've got a couple of questions of my own. What are you seeing as issues within the school, Officer DiGiorgio? Like, what kind of apps are presenting the most problems? I've got a 10-year-old, a 4th grader, who claims that she's the only child in her entire class that doesn't have a phone, and beats me up about it pretty much every day, morning, noon, and night. So I'd like to know, what are kind of the entry points here that I should really be aware of as and when she does grind me down, and then what are the implications of that and the kind of the peer pressure as a parent and for the student?
So what I've been seeing within the schools is Snapchat is the hot one right now, and how the information is sent out. If it's through an image, along with the image is there's a caption that goes with that image, and that's instantaneously. I'm not sure about how long that image stands. I think it's roughly 5 to 10 seconds, maybe. Can it go by long? Yeah. So we've seen Snapchat's kind of the thing that we're dealing with. Instagram, Finstagram, which is also it's a fake Instagram, like Camilla was saying earlier, that a lot of the students are creating Finstagrams, and what we're seeing is the boys are mostly using it, having conversation if it's regarding weed or vaping, maybe communication if there's a party, and the women are using it more towards to talk, trash about one another. There might be some bullying. That's where the Finstagrams are working. That what we're seeing on that. So, in regards to legality, I'm going to let Lieutenant Thompson kind of go into that with how we go about bringing it to the juvenile court if it's a preservation letter and a subpoena.
So, I usually work with Brian. Obviously, if an issue comes up, if there's something that's illegal, that's when I start to work on it. I'll usually do request what's called an administrative subpoena, which is issued to the district attorney's office. It's basically a search warrant, but it's issued to Google headquarters in California. It's to request all records involving a certain account. Usually I can get everything that was ever tied to that account, when it was set up, who set it up, what email they used, if there's any address attached with it, any text messages, any kind of photos, anything you can usually get. The only problem with that is there's no law or anything or guideline that they have to follow for how long they have to keep information. So Google might keep it for a half a year. Instagram, I keep it for like 3 months, so it's hit or miss sometimes. But once I get that information, we kind of determine how to proceed. We work with the DA's office to see how far they want us to take it, if they want us to charge or advise.
And how severe would the penalties be?
It would depend on what the actual crime or content would be. I don't think you're going to see a 14-year-old go to jail or anything like that. We do have a jail diversion program, and
also too is the reputation. I think a lot of these kids, and I try to reinforce to these students at the school that, I mean, I know we've talked about it over and over again with these different discussions, but once you hit the send button, it's gone. But also the reputation is compromised with that particular student, and a lot of times that's all you have, especially in today's day and age. And so that's something I continuously talk about with the kids, that it's important that you really think this stuff through before you post it out there.
Yeah.
Because now, I mean, following high school, whatever it is they choose to do, if it's college or military, all these employers now are going back, and they're going into these social media platforms, and that's how they're doing their background checks now. We do it as a police department. So this stuff can resurface, and it can compromise them as they get older and hurt their opportunities for employment.
So the thing that I found alarming was that the guy who received the explicit photographs from the girl who liked him in the video that we saw, I mean, she might have just had his number and he might have not wanted to receive those, but he was charged with possession. How does that actually work? What's your defense in that example?
Well, it's a great question. It's a case-by-case basis. I mean, they can be...
Their messages and stuff.
Right, okay.
If there's nothing that on his end that said, send me this, and it's all
Right.
her,
Yeah.
then that's something totally different.
Okay.
But he can be charged.
Okay.
Even by just receiving his
just
possession.
by receiving it. That's quite frightening.
Yeah.
And one final question before I monopolise the mic here for Darlene. So how long? So the kids get their phones in, say, 4th, 5th grade. How long before you see them in your office, kind of suffering with the flip side of the
depression? You mean?
Yeah, the kind of the anxiety and the stress side of it as a result of them having exposure to all of this media.
It's interesting that you should ask me that question, because Camilla and I were talking about this earlier. So I've been in practice for over 25 years, and the increase in mental health clients that we're seeing from 8 and 9 years old and up related to social media is tripled over the past 8 to 10 years. And the severity of the depression and anxiety is much worse than it was 8 to 10 years ago as well. So it's, there's been lots of studies done on the social emotional impact of social media because of the like thing that we talked about earlier. If you're not getting enough likes, if you're getting too many likes, if people are saying things about you on the internet, or if they're not saying anything about you at all. It's that need to fit in or catch up. And I even find my adult friends sometimes get caught up on this with Facebook. Look how happy their lives are. Look how great everything looks. And most of the time it's fake. I mean, they're posting everything that they want you to see, not all the stuff that goes on. I mean, I do too. I don't post anything bad. My dog pooped. I don't post that. So, I think that we can all get caught up in that. I think the difference is as adults, we have the prefrontal cortex that's kicked in that can say, oh, okay, you're being silly, this is crazy. The kids don't have that. So they get really wrapped up in the drama of this, and we all know drama in middle school and high school is a big thing. So there's a significant increase. And, I wish that I could tell you exactly what it was and exactly how to stop it, but I think it's just the generation that we're in. So I think at this point, we need to start dealing with what we have and try to figure out how to help these kids as best we can. Doesn't mean take their phones away, but I definitely think we need to have a lot more dialogue and a lot more conversations with our kids about how they feel about what they're seeing and what they're doing. Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. And one final question for Dr. Goldberg. If a child has been using their phone for say, a year, 2 years, and they're already kind of experiencing that pain in the neck, or they're complaining of headaches, these exercises, I mean, we've said, nothing is going to cure it because the phone is here to stay, but how long is it going to take to kind of help to start to achieve some benefit from doing these exercises, just from spending 5 minutes in the morning? What can we expect?
That's a good question. Well, it depends on what is the issue. If some child is having headaches and neck pain and those kinds of physical problems, then honestly, it's something that, from my perspective, and there's not much else that could be happening, is there are some of these vertebrae that have moved out of place, because that's what happens when you're in this flexion posture, and it's putting pressure on nerves, and that's what we see. And there are some really good, gentle ways to take pressure off the nerves and put things back, but it comes to a point where that is, I don't know what else you would do with it. Okay. Because in your question, doing these kinds of exercises, they're great, but if there are vertebrae that are fixated and locked because of this constant pressure on those areas because of the different weight, of the increased weight of the head and all of that, a lot of times you have to get those bones back into the right position.
Okay.
And the exercise and all that. And it's not, with children, luckily, they do really well, and it's usually a quick procedure. Mm-hmm. But there are a lot of kids that suffer. It's a real problem. There's, the headaches, neck pain, those are real things.
Okay.
They're not making it up.
Okay. Has anybody got any other questions?
Thank you for your comments tonight. This is really interesting. You just talked a little bit about seeing mental health impacts increased mental health impacts with all of this technology. Do you see, or what types of mental health impacts are you seeing for children that are limiting cell phone use or having or not having cell phones? Are you seeing any issues there, mental health-wise or otherwise?
So I think in general, we've seen an increase in mental health issues across the board. It just seems to be a significant increase across the board with the kids using cell phones and social media more so than even just the cell phones. I think that there's more awareness about what kids are going through, and we, in Holliston, last year actually, we started a mindfulness program where we taught some of the teachers to teach the young kids, K through 3, some mindfulness exercises within the school setting, because of that we're trying to be more aware of what these kids are going through. I think there's a lot more pressure on kids in general, and they're going 100 miles an hour. There's also that immediate access constantly. As Camilla said, when we grew up, we could go home and get away from whatever stress we were dealing with and run outside and play for a few hours. Nowadays, it follows you everywhere you go. So I do think there's an increase across the board, but I think the kids who are using social media, we're seeing a huge spike in the depression and anxiety among those kids. If you keep them away from cell phones, it doesn't necessarily completely get rid of it, but it improves it. It improves that part of it when they're trying to keep up with the social media part of it. On the other flip side of it, though, if all their friends are on social media and they're not, then they get left out and neglected and depressed on that end because they're being left out of all the social media and all their friends chatting and things like that. So there's no quick, fast answer for that one. Again, it's just keeping the dialogue going and paying attention and knowing your child and listening and seeing how you can help and what we can do to help.
I'd like to say one thing. Just add, maybe, sorry. One of the things that happens with video use, but I think it's also with looking for emails and not getting the email that you thought you were going to get, or just this anticipation, is that we go into this fight or flight pattern in our brain where whether it's kids who watch violent video games, is that really doing something to them and creating some kind of issues for them or for other people? Why are all the perpetrators of, or most of them, of these mass killings, they're usually young adolescent males who have histories of video games. So what happens, because I know this for a fact, is that our brains don't know the difference between real violence and video game violence. So we get locked into this fight-or-flight pattern, which creates depression, and it creates a lot of issues. So there are those psychiatric issues that go along.
Yeah, definitely. I often talk to a lot of my patients about how the fight or flight response is often, in the caveman days, you were running from a lion or you're running from a burning building. A lot of our children, as young as 5 and 6 and 7 years old, wake up in the morning in that pattern already feel like their norepinephrine levels in their brain are so high that they're in that mode of running from a lion, even though there's no lion behind them. So their anxiety levels start real high, and then they can only go higher from there. Oftentimes they don't go down from there unless we give them tools to manage it.
Right, and physically it's damaging because cortisol levels increase, and blood pressure increases, respiratory rate increases, respiratory volume decreases. There's just so many issues that happen with the fight or flight pattern when it's not turned off. Because as you said, it is supposed to be inside of us, but it's not supposed to be used always and always turned on.
Okay. Any other questions before we close? I don't think we've ever done this before. We're finishing bang on 9 o'clock. So a huge thank you to each of our panelists. I think that's been a great discussion. And thank you to everybody for coming. Please share what you've learned this evening with your friends and networks. And we'll see you for the next Parent Ed event in the fall. Thank you.